Check, 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 check. Hey, everybody, welcome back. All right, welcome back. Chapter 11, moving right on through this book, aren't we? So, when we think about chapter 11, let's talk about it. It's We're really going to start diving into how we deliver the speech, what we're doing with the speech. So, we're going to dive into that kind of process of what should we do with a speech? What methods could we use? How do we prepare? How can we practice? And what to do when delivering our speech. So that's really an overview of what we're going to talk about today. The importance of delivery. Most of our fear of public speaking comes from the delivery. It comes from that having to give the speech is what I hear many students say. Having to give the speech. We tend to focus on our fear of failure. We feel like we're going to mess this up. We're going to fail, right? And that leads to anxiety, and anxiety leads to us stressing out and not wanting to give the speech. Ultimately, that's the science of this. That's the science of glossophobia. So let's think about that. We need to start thinking in a positive frame, positivity about this speech, about giving speeches, about the experience of giving a speech. If we do so, we set up a mindset, a mental mindset that will allow us to become successful. So think about that. It's real. And one of the ways to achieve that positive mindset is knowing the material and practice, practice, practice. Delivering a speech is ultimately important. We know this. This is the hardest part to execute, the hardest part to do, right? So when we think about delivering our speech, and we think about how much time we spent organizing ideas, doing the research, our thoughts, all those things, we don't want to fail. All those things work together to help us be more successful, but ultimately we have to still give the speech. In the end, a poorly written speech delivered superbly is still a poorly written speech. Meaning, spend the time front and center, setting up, organizing your ideas. Make sure you take that time to do those things. Because even if you could deliver it perfectly, but it was poorly written, it's still going to be received as a not so great speech. Remember, public speaking requires much more formality than talking, but less formality than reading and writing. Okay? There are four standard methods of speech delivery. If I were you, I'd pay attention to this. There is impromptu, manuscript, extemporaneous, and memorized. Let's go through each one. Impromptu means just that it is spur of the moment. I've been asked to give many of these. We have no time, little to no time to prepare. But it's fairly common in life, especially as you become more and more of an expert in your field, more and more professional in your field. You'll be asked to do more and more of these. So you'll have to come up with something quick. So when I think about impromptu speeches, one of the first things I want to make sure that I don't do from the podium is tell them it's impromptu. Don't tell the audience it's an impromptu speech. Take a moment to devise some sort of general structure and topic, obviously. Then kind of build off of that. Keep it simple. 3 points or less. Say thank you and finish your speech. Here I've got a video. I'm going to make sure that you guys get an opportunity to watch this on how to give impressive impromptu speeches. Now, in this class, we do not have to do this. but I wanted to make that available for those who want to get a little more out of this class. We don't teach an intermediate public speaking, but that video would be more about intermediate public speaking. And these speeches will be required at some point in your life, not in this class, but in your life. Manuscript. All right. When we think about manuscripts are what politicians typically deliver. They limit the amount of eye contact and spontaneity, and they also tend to have more read vocal cues. What I mean by that is, think about it. Manuscript speeches are read off a piece of paper or a teleprompter. Nowadays, it's more teleprompter, but it's still read, meaning it lacks spontaneity. It's hard to match eye contact with that concept because it's hard to read off a screen and maintain some sort of eye contact. And we tend to read, we tend to go into this mode where all our words start to sound the same vocal inflection and cues, which puts our audience to sleep. Right? It's boring. Manuscript, we're not doing this speech either. If I catch you doing the speech, which some of you will, because you didn't practice enough times, and you'll end up reading your speech to me, you'll pay the price because the rubric doesn't like manuscript speech. I never ask you for one. I certainly don't want one. Again, remember the rubric is based off the state of Georgia's standards. It is maintaining those standards, meaning you can take this class here or University of Georgia or any other Georgia school, and you will have to meet these certain criteria. Now, why do people use manuscript speeches? Well, they're very important. One of the biggest reasons we do use a manuscript speech is because sometimes we must be very specific in our wording. Might be for legal purposes or a political issue or something along that line. But sometimes we must be very specific with our words. And that's honestly why we use them. Political speakers typically use their auto reader again. I remember the last president said there was a malfunction, and basically, for those who don't know, it was the 4th of July celebration, and basically Washington was making sure he took over the airports during the War of Independence. Now, for those of you who don't know, airplanes weren't invented until late 1800s. Gliders, and then really effective gliders, and then you have the Wright brothers, although there's some question whether or not there was an Italian that actually had powered flight before perhaps the Wright brothers. That's an interesting topic if you want to dive into it and explore it. Remember, I don't want a manuscript speech in this class. Please don't. Please, 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 please. Because you will pay the price on points. Extemporaneous speeches. Now, this is what we will do. An extemporaneous speech is a presentation of a carefully planned and rehearsed speech, spoken in a conversational manner using brief notes, not pages of notes, brief notes. It's going to be based on a full preparation outline. It allows for flexibility. It demands practice. If you don't believe me, watch this speech. It's going to be one of your speeches you get to watch. Watch what happens. Now, this is the most common type of speech, extemporaneous speech. Most people have to use or deliver these throughout their careers. That's why we do it. Memorize speeches. Now, I'm not asking you for a memorized speech. But memorized speeches allow a speaker to have great eye contact with their audience. They are awesome when you have to have specific wording, especially for legal matters. The disadvantage is, though, you have to take the time to memorize it all. And again, we're back to that concept of you could lack natural vocal cues. You could start to sound monotone. And a memorized speech, you can't really ad lib a section if you forgot something, or you can't really go back to the beginning, do a rewind, right? We can't go back. We're stuck in a forward progress for a memorized speech. So, again, we're not given these, but I want you to know the types. So, I want to talk today about preparing for your delivery, preparing for you to give a successful speech. And I want you to think about, what is the space you're going to give your speech in? When we were in the classroom, obviously it would have been a lectern or a platform. We would have to think about the size of the classroom, right? Is it indoors? Is it outdoors? Think about your speech you may be giving for a special occasion. Maybe it's outdoors. You might need to project. Will you be using a microphone? Will you be talking all over the microphone, right? Know how to use a microphone. Microphones are great tools. But the reality is, you don't have to have one. If you have a webcam, you have a phone, you have those capabilities. They're all built in. And it's much better than standing on top of the microphone, shouting into it, or whispering into it, and no one can hear you, right? Microphones are an art. It takes practice. So I don't suggest you run out and buy one. If you want to, it's your business. Practice first. Think about audience size. Every person absorbs your vocal cues, meaning your vocal energy, the sound waves from your body. So you have to take that into consideration as well. Now, for us, delivering a speech, it sounds easy, except it's not always easy. And here's why. You have to start to think about what software you might use to deliver the speech. And what I mean by that is, you have multiple tools we can dive into. We're going to talk about this in another class again. I recommend a tool called Zoom. Zoom allows you to make the recording. It has it in a file, and you can utilize it. From that recording, it's like an MP4. From that recording, you can email me the recording. You can email me a link to the recording. Or you could turn around and take that and put it on your YouTube channel and then send me the link to the YouTube page, and I've got your speech. How about that? That is super easy, super straightforward. For a first speech, it's easy because you could use your cell phone and literally send me the speech through the cell phone to cell phone. Problem is, speech number 2 and 3, not so easy. Longer speeches, probably going to have to break them apart. That's why I suggest using a tool that will allow you to record either the whole thing in one, or you record your first half and your second half. This is all prior preparation, prior thought. You can't do this once you've already started, right? So consider those options. Another thing you might want to do is talk to IT or talk to the Student Success Center. They might have an idea on how you can utilize Blackboard to send me the speech, because it is possible through OneDrive. Meaning you record your speech, you save it to your OneDrive, which is provided through your login through your school. And then you send me a link to that file. I go in, make sure when you send me that link, you give me a week to get it graded. That would be fair. Okay. Give me a timeline, or make it unlimited. And then that way I can grade your speech so that we can see and give you the feedback on what it is you need to do. So those are things you have to think about preparing for your delivery of your speeches. More than just, you think about it, oh, well, I don't have to think about giving it in front of the class and all that. Yes, but there's other parameters that make it just as difficult. Now, let's talk about how one should practice a speech. One should always practice a speech repeatedly. I don't even know that most people ask me, how many times do you practice a speech? Well, I can tell you an impromptu speech for me is never impromptu. And I'll tell you why. Because there are elements of other speeches I've had to give. It's just how I am. Because that way I'm prepared, that way I'm organized, and that way I know what I'm trying to deliver. Meaning, an impromptu speech, which has never been given before and you're put on the spot about, technically in my world, I've given it before. I know where I want to be with that speech. I know what I need to do with that speech. So I practiced it numerous times. Now, I can't tell you how many times you will need to practice your speech. Every person varies, but you need to practice until it becomes natural. Okay? Giving the speech should seem natural, like you're having a conversation with someone, but a little bit more formal than a typical conversation pattern. Remember that. We talked about that last with language. It's a little more formal, but not as formal as writing. Practice makes perfect. For me, I have to do a speech at least 3 times, at least 3 times. Most of the time, I have to practice a speech 5 to 8 times to get it to where it becomes fairly natural for me. That's me, and I do this a lot. You might be able to get by with 3 times. You might need 10, 12, 20. It's okay. Each one of us is slightly different. And what I mean by practice may only makes perfect if you practice perfectly. Record yourself. Look at the recordings, see what it is you can improve on, and then do it. If you just go through the speech, da 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 da, words, right? And don't actually apply it, don't actually make change, you just learn the words, you're turning into a memorized speech, and it's going to probably sound worse than if you had practiced it to deliver it in a real manner. Practice your speech beforehand many times. Practice it at home. Practice it in the car. Practice it wherever you feel comfortable. Start thinking about where you're going to give me your speeches from in your life. Are you going to go into school and record them? Go into an empty classroom, record them? How are you going to go about that? Going to do it from your bedroom? Please don't do it from your bed. Put a little more time and effort in that. Please don't do it in your pajamas. It's happened. If you have a medical excuse, I'm down with that. But the reality is respect each other. I don't get out of bed and then just teach your class, right? I expect that kind of same thought process. Be professional, be courteous. So practice makes perfect. Practice your speech out loud. Practice it at full volume. Practice it standing up. Practice it sitting down. Practice it. Practice it at a desk. Practice it at the table. Wherever it is you think you might give your speech, but practice it there. If you can, practice it in front of an audience. Audience can give you feedback, and that alone can help make your speech better. Practice your speech for the full time, for the full term. Check and make sure if this is a speech that's supposed to go 5 minutes, make sure your speech doesn't go 3.5 minutes, because then I have to penalize you for the time penalty that you didn't get to the 4.5 minute mark. Practice the speech by recording yourself. Again, watch the feedback loop, make changes from it. What should I do when delivering my speech? Well, let's talk about what we shouldn't do as well. Our hands are gestures, are their extension of our body, and they should be there to welcome the audience and bring us in. Bring us in. Notice open palms bringing you in. The hands shouldn't be here, right, by my face. Now, for some of you, you see the slide and you couldn't help but laugh because if you know the movie reference, it's quite funny, right? I don't know what to do with my hands. Please don't give me your speech this way. I've had a couple. Don't do it because you see how it changed my voice. Don't be all over the microphone with the hands, right? Don't be putting your hand up here. Don't go like this and give me your speech because you know what it looks like then. It looks like you dread it. It looks like this is the worst thing that ever happened to you, or even worse. It looks like you could care less if you're even giving it. Right? So hands are important. Hands can be inclusive. Don't use clenched fists. Don't point at the screen because no one likes to be pointed at. Generally, think about your gestures. Make it for a larger audience. Pretend that you're giving it to the whole classroom. 20 people, your hands are going to sweep the room. Sweep the room. Okay? Also, your eyes should be sweeping the room, making contact with people that are in the class. Don't rock the podium. Don't rock your desk. Look at this. Watch. See what happens? I put mine on this desk. All of a sudden, everything's shaky. If I'm nervous, everything's shaky. Now I've just made it worse for myself, right? So relax. Be mindful of your energy. We talked about that. Not too much energy, not too little energy. Slow down. Be consistent, but don't be too slow. Hands can be very expressive, both positively and negatively. So make sure your hands aren't telling the wrong story. Think about your feet and your posture. Your feet should be about shoulder width apart. Your feet are your foundation. Make sure it's firm. Don't twist your feet around. Don't lock your knees if you're standing up, because I don't want you passing out or falling down. Roll your shoulders back, shoulders back. I tend to come towards the microphone. I try to bring myself closer into the screen. That's my style. Don't be a mile from the screen. Okay? It's not fair. But I try to be closer. And then if you notice, though, I still throw my shoulders back because I want to be able to breathe deeply, not all over the microphone. Excuse me. My allergies are bad today, and that just made it worse. So roll your shoulders back, breathe, and look natural. Don't lean. Don't use the desk to support you or lectern to support you. Remember, they are for your notes, not for leaning or tipping over. I have seen people dance them across the room. I mean, I've seen people do a lot of things. Hug it, grab it, wrestle it almost because they were so scared to give a speech. Don't be that person. Just relax. Practice your speech and you'll be fine. Remember, energy. We don't want to come too much energy. We don't want to come with too little energy either. We want to come with the right level of energy, the right speed, the right pacing. We don't want to be too fast. We don't want to be too slow. We got to keep it in the middle. We want to keep it accessible for our audience. Remember, respect our audience. If you're using objects, bring up there what you need. Don't bring up other things what you don't need. And here's why I'm saying that. Because if you bring a water bottle and you're giving a speech and you decide, oh my goodness, I need a drink, hold on one second. Yep. Or worse, it can fall out of your hand. Clatter, 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 right? Oh my goodness, I've seen it. It happens. Bring only what you need up there. Keep your notes small, on note cards preferably. Each speech has its own parameters. If you look at it, it tells you what you can do. Also, be mindful of your jewelry. Any fringe on your clothing, any hair on your face, especially those of us who have longer hair. My hair is not that long right now, but it can come around and get in your mouth. Also, for those of us who have beards and stuff, you might want to like shave that top lip, come make sure it's trimmed up nice. Your hair's not going everywhere, right? Make sure you keep it real, keep it natural. Wear comfortable enough clothing, but don't wear too casual clothing. Hi, Mimi. It's one of the dogs. Also, your shoes are important. Your shoes are back to that firm foundation, your support. Wear comfortable shoes, but make sure that they're professional enough. We talked about eye contact a brief moment ago, but I'll get more in depth about it. Make sure we're making eye contact with everyone in the room. Remember, this speech is designed to be taught in front of a whole classroom, so don't stare me down and give me your speech. I don't want to see it like this, right? Because think about it, many cultures don't even have as much eye contact time as our culture does. Eye contact time, what do you mean by that? Well, our culture says If I'm the speaker, I should be making about 80% of the time, 80% of my time while speaking, should be maintaining eye contact with my audience. I shouldn't focus on any individual for more than 5 seconds. It gets weird and awkward. So if you're staring me down and giving me your speech, you see where I'm saying? A couple points off. No big deal, but it's think about how you're presenting yourself. Balance your eye contact left, right, center. However you want to do it, right, center, left, whatever you want to do. I typically start from the left side of the room, move myself toward the right side of the room. That's how I do it. I don't know why I do it that way. I just do. Okay. Eye contact alone takes practice. Knowing where to put your hands takes practice. These are all things that I'll see if you practiced by how you do. Vocal aspects, another thing that takes practice. Make sure your volume is sufficient enough to speak to the back of the room. Get that voice out there. Make sure your pitch varies, right? You notice I don't talk all high pitched or all low pitched. I'm kind of in the middle. I try to vary it a bit. Why? Because we like variety as people. We don't like monotone. Same thing about rate. We don't want monotone rate. We want a consistent rate, but we want to vary it a bit. Use your pauses. Pauses are great when you want your audience to pay attention to something or think about something. It helps an audience become aware. There is no substitute to practice, okay? Practice is of utmost importance. I've seen some speeches that could have been great speeches that ended up being mediocre speeches because they decided to go with the wing it approach, right? Yeah, I know my material. I'm good. I got this. They did a one take, and that's what they got, a one take. They didn't think about their energy. They didn't think about where their hands were. They didn't think about the fact that they were reading their speech off. A lot of things hurt them. They could have been an A speech. They ended up being a B minus speech by the time everything came off. It stinks, but that's kind of how life is sometimes. The more time we put into something, though, usually the better our result. I went to McDonald's for lunch today. My wife, her daughter, they're out dress shopping. Prom dress season, right? Senior year, big deal. I had lessons to give, lessons to put in, right? I need to get these lessons over to you. That was my reasoning. I got to stay home, thank goodness, right? Not exactly my favorite thing to do, but I would have done it. In the end, it's about wanting to be somewhere and wanting to do something. No matter how many times you practice, if you really don't want to do a good job, you won't. Okay? Meaning, the more time you put into it, the better off you will be. What's better, a steak that marinated overnight or a McDonald's hamburger? That's what I had for lunch, by the way. 2 cheeseburger meal. Ugh. Point was, I need something quick in between lessons, right? I needed to be able to cover this material for you. And there's nobody else around, so I'm not going to cook something. Now, I can tell you I'd rather had the steak, but the honest opinion was in that moment, the McDonald's got me by. Please don't make your grade about getting you by. That's where I'm going with this. You deserve sirloin. You deserve top tier, right? Give top tier and you'll get top tier. That's how life works. So think about the energy you're putting into your vocal, your physical. Don't be a rocker. I've seen some. I know that sometimes people, we have medical conditions, it happens. I can live with that. One of my best friends growing up, we played outfield together. He was drafted. I was a signed undrafted signee. But we played on a travel team together. Two different high schools, best friends though. Then we played against each other in the minor leagues, and then we played for each other for a brief moment in the minor leagues, and then we played together on softball teams and baseball teams. as we aged out, and then I kind of moved out of that area. Where I'm going with this man was as talented as I've ever seen a baseball player be. He was Rocco Baldelli good, and if you don't know who that is, you might want to look it up if you like baseball players. Rocco was a five-tool player. I will tell you, my friend Derek was only a three-tool player, but he could have been a baseball player, a major leaguer. Why he gave up his dream was his communication skills, and no one really took the time to work with him. Back when I was playing baseball, we didn't have a lot of coaching on this side skills. Now they do. Now I actually get to help at times with teams. My friend had Tourette's. It's a medical condition. Under stressful situations like public speaking, he was prone to outburst. And these outbursts can't really be controlled. I'm trying to think of the nicest way to put it. And the words chosen are poor. Sometimes they're curse words, even. Okay. So it ultimately ended his career early because he was successful, but he was having to give press conferences. And when I played on a team with him, I rallied around him and I went out there with him on those, and I helped him feel comfortable. And perhaps if more people would have done that and had taken the time to do something like this class, he would have played professional baseball. There was no doubt he had the skill, but it was what it was. He had a passion to communicate. He had a desire to communicate, but he had a medical condition that kind of affected him, affected his vocal ability and his physical ability and his language. That was the most important one that was affected. Point is, Darren is now a high school baseball coach. He coaches one of the better teams in the Metro East area of St. Louis, Missouri. And Derek and I are still good friends. Derek also coaches a travel ball team. Derek outgrew his Tourette's, so to speak. He still has minuscule episode. Now they're just tremors and such. He can hold the words back. He's also a history teacher. It's pretty cool. We can achieve great things if we know how, if someone takes the time to show us the way. Again, practice makes perfect. Please keep that in mind. Know that we've got, and I say it in about 3 weeks on this slide, but it varies every semester, varies slightly. Remember, we are going to have our first speech coming up after our midterm, and that is our introductory speech. Now, that speech is a self-introduction, 2 to 3 minutes introducing yourself and speaking about you. No notes, no note cards, no outline on this one. You're going to tell me about you. Surely you can talk about you for 2 to 3 minutes. Some people tell me, oh my gosh, I have no idea what I'm going to say. We're all interesting. We're all unique. And I'm going to show you my version of this right now. Give me one moment to focus. Hello, my name is M.Shawn Willard. I've gone by Shawn all my life. Since I was a kid. My dad's name is Michael. My name was Michael. But I decided at about 5 years old, I was going to be Shawn. And I've always been Shawn ever since. Now, you'll still email me here at Michael. But the reality is I'm Shawn. Everyone knows me as Shawn. I play baseball as Shawn Willard. So that's who I am. Speaking of baseball, yes, I did play 2 years in the minor leagues. I was undrafted. So there were people like Mike Piazza that went ahead of me, and yet I didn't even get a chance. Yet I did. I worked hard. I went to the camps, and pretty soon I was filling out a roster. I was filling out a roster because I could do a lot of things well, but I wasn't a great player. I wasn't what you would call a top tier player by any stretch. I just worked hard. I was good defensively, I had great speed, and I could hit for a reasonable average. My power was starting to come on, but about that time, I had a series of knee injuries, and I ended up out of the game after about 2.5 years. Now, I went straight from high school to professional baseball. I had no idea what I was going to do. What was I going to be? But I remembered one of my English teachers telling me, "You write very well. You stay up on current events and politics. Maybe you should be a journalist." And I was. So I went to school. I went to a community college, a 2-year school. Got an AA in journalism and a minor, an AS in political science. And then I went to work in the newspaper business. I enjoyed it thoroughly. In 2 years, I was an editor for a paper. I found I hated it. I hated being the English Nazi, so to speak. That's why I won't teach English till this day. And I don't really love teaching creative writing. I will do it at some schools, but I don't. I didn't want to be the editor. I wanted to cover the stories. So after a 5-year career in journalism, I burned out. Went to work in corporate communications. One of my friends helped me get into the largest brokerage company that was family owned, independently owned. I worked for them for years. And then there was a problem in my department where um, some of my coworkers, we were all competing for a position, and some of my coworkers basically slandered me, and I decided that I didn't really want to work at a company that allowed that kind of communication to exist, especially in a corporate communications department. They talked bad about me, and they were mean. Yeah, I wasn't going to stoop to their level. So from there, I kind of bounced around. I went to work in the advertising agencies. I went into sales for a while and marketing. I did very well in sales and marketing. And at 40 years old, I decided I needed a change in my life. I was downsized by the company I was working with. There was an economic downturn, and I went back to school. I finished my bachelor's degree while working on my master's degree. I had half my master's degree done by the time I finished my bachelor's degree. And by 43, I graduated with a bachelor's and master's degree. 41, I actually started attending classes. So 2 years, 2 years and one semester to be exact. I'm pretty proud of that. Education is important, and it's never too late for your education. I still stick around baseball a lot. I do help coach sometimes. I haven't much lately because right now I'm working about 50 hours a week as the communications and marketing director for a jewelry company in the Atlanta metro area. And I also teach 2 classes. So that keeps me very busy. That and my family. And that's a little bit about Shawn Willard and who he is and how he got there. Thanks. And mine was like a minute longer than it should have been. And if you didn't notice, I actually could rattle through that pretty easy because I've done it a million times. I've had to introduce myself many times. So think about it. We're all interesting. I didn't even get to the fun fact. At 40 years old, I hadn't picked up a bat and ball in a few years. So at 40, I went back to play in a fast pitch wiffle ball league in Atlanta, and I was third in home runs and led the league in batting at 40 years old. There's all kinds of fun facts about each and every one of us. Pull it out. I have a friend who survived a very tragic car accident. You know, that's an amazing story in and of itself. That alone can take 2 to 3 minutes. All of us have something unique. All of us have a gift. Share with me your gift. Share with me who you are. That's what you're going to do in the introductory speech. It's coming. It'll be on the announce. It's actually in our schedule. On our schedule, and it's in the announcement section of when it will be due as well. All right. Again, some videos I want you to watch about preparation and about what you should do to help you be successful. I want you to watch these videos and tell me 3 things you learned from them. That's going to be your question for this week. Thank you. I'll see you next time.